Make sure all the volumes are working. And we're good. We're live. Welcome to Mindful Live number 22. I believe it is Mindful Live 22. Welcome. It is currently the 21st of January in the year 2022. It is what? Today is Friday, the last Mindful Live of the week. Mindful Live 22. Welcome. What we're talking about today, Trinidad has seen, unfortunately, first time on the lives. Well, welcome, Mr. Dillon. Glad to have you here. Trinidad has unfortunately now seen a new record in numbers. We have reached that unenviable milestone where we have a new record in daily infections in terms of COVID-19, unfortunately. But interestingly enough, you are not as yet seeing that corresponding rise in death rates. Now, obviously, the truth of that matter is death rates usually trail a bit behind the peak infection rate. So maybe we aren't yet seeing that kind of the responding death rate for this kind of record numbers we're seeing. But maybe one can hope that if this is the Omicron variant we are seeing now, because this is kind of what is to be expected from the Omicron variant. If this is the Omicron variant we're seeing now, one can hope that even when the actual death rate for this specific spike does catch up to the actual spike in the next 2 weeks possibly, that we'd actually see a decreasing death rate even still. That can be the hope. So we're reading first now out of The Guardian. TNT reports record 1,068 new COVID cases. That's a large number. With 1,068 COVID-19 cases, Trinidad and Tobago broke its record for daily confirmed COVID-19 cases yesterday, beating the previous record of 984 cases reported on December 3rd, 2021. Yesterday's count was the first time for the pandemic. To date, the Ministry of Health had confirmed and reported to the public over 1,000 cases in a day. On November 15, 2021, Technical Director Epidemiology Dr. Avery Hines had said if the then current state of infections continued, TNT would record 1,000 new cases in a day. In the last 24 hours, the ministry had also reported that 18 more people had died of COVID-19. Not sure which one. 2 of whom were young adults and 4 of whom had no underlying conditions. So, good night. Hope I ain't miss none. You ain't miss much, King Kaka. Don't worry. There isn't much that you miss. It has more evolutions than Goku. Yes. So, we are seeing some record cases. As of yesterday, there were 17,349 active COVID-19 cases. The highest of the pandemic to date. Accounting for 1 in every 80 people in the country. That's a lot. That's a lot of people right now that would be strucken with this new virus. It's a large amount. 1 in 80 means that there's a high likelihood that just about everyone is aware of someone who is seeing some of the negative effects of this virus. It's very widespread right now. To all of those now jumping in the chat, be sure as you drop in the chat to hit that like button. Of course, on any one of the platforms, hit that like button. Let the algorithms know that you're here and you're listening, and also share the live if you're so interested in doing such a thing. It would make it go further and we'd get more viewers from that. It's not always, but it's usually more interesting with more viewers present. Wonder how much this is costing the government. You mean costing us? And it's costing us a lot, actually. Quite a bit. The already exhausted hospital system will be put under further pressure as cases increase. Severe COVID-19 cases continue to overwhelm intensive care units with an occupancy averaging near 89%, meaning 9 out of 10 beds across the nation's ICUs are filled. Overall hospital occupancy as of yesterday stood near 60%. Now, Again, this is the main problem, as people have reiterated over and over and over and over and over and over and over again ad nauseum. The main problem with this COVID-19 pandemic is the healthcare system. And you see, that's part of the problem with the Omicron. Although some may call it milder, it may be good night shiny Dougla, and it may be in reality to some extent, to quite a large extent, milder. If the case is that the number of infections spikes so high, and not all, but a large portion of these people still end up in the hospital, even if they don't necessarily end up dead, if they end up in the hospital, there's still the risk of having that overloaded hospital system. And with a limited hospital and healthcare system like ours, and with a public healthcare system like ours, having it overloaded is a disaster, or a recipe for a disaster. COVID-19 daily cases can be counted based on the date when someone is swabbed or sample collection. And it is also measured based on when those samples test positive. All right. On January 10th, both the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Roshan Parasram, and Dr. Hines indicated that the country is in the embryonic stages of the community spread of Omicron. So they admitted since January 10th, that would have been 11 days ago, nearly 2 weeks ago, we were already within that kind of early stages of the community spread. And as far as I can see, I would use an educated guess and say that now it seems like we are well within those stages. You can watch it and kind of see that something has changed already. So we are looking at early community or local spread for sure, and it will only be a matter of time before we get what has happened in other countries. And Nathan Florell playing up. Well, I don't have Flo, so my apologies that your Flo is playing up. Again, as per usual, if you missed the live in this part here, if you missed this live, you can go over. Even if we had more beds, I figure things would still be the same. People need to avoid it. Yeah. If you missed the live, you can go over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring on YouTube, and you'd be able to review almost all of the lives there and see what was said in the previous lives also. So if you miss anything in this live, feel free to check it back there whenever you're ready. Go subscribe, Nathan Springer on YouTube. We are waiting to see. Parasram said then the ministry estimated there could be an increase in COVID-19 cases within 2 weeks. And well, that's about 2 weeks from, we are about 2 weeks from then now, and we do see that increase. We are waiting to see that increase, at least coming out of the samples. The country has recorded 28 cases of the Omicron variants of concern. However, according to Dr. Hines, 8 of these were found within the community and are still under investigation. So it seems very likely that we are already well within the community spread stages of the Omicron variant. With just 3 Omicron cases in Tobago, Dr. Tiffany Hoyt, Acting County Medical Officer of Health, said, "We have ongoing community spread. Tobago's first Omicron case had no links to travel or a COVID-19 positive individual, while the second was an unvaccinated minor who returned to Tobago after transiting through Trinidad. Details on the third case have not been released at this time." So Tobago has cases popping up with no link to outside travel. And not only no link to outside travel, no known link to even a COVID positive person. So that suggests that very likely it is well within community spread. Infectious disease specialist Dr. Nathaniel Duke, during Wednesday's Tobago House of Assembly post-executive council media briefing, said, "So this variant, which is now circulating in the Tobago space, as of today, they have recorded 3. So epidemiologically, we can multiply that by 100, and that will probably be the amount of Omicron positive patients circulating in our society. So therefore, a surge is about to come. So we have to be prepared for that surge that is on our doorstep." Based on the latest genetic sequencing data from the Ministry of Health and the University of the West Indies, Omicron accounted for approximately 25% of samples submitted. So Omicron is already accounting for 1/4 of the samples submitted. Why is the government still acting like we can avoid the spread? We'll all obviously encounter it. Many countries are taking the proliferation approach. Good night also, we taking part in carnival celebrations. Well, we're talking about that carnival business just now too, because we've seen quite a few people come out to say something about that. But yes, as some people are pointing out in the chat, some countries are moving away from that COVID zero or attempt to try and reduce the spread. England has dropped, the United Kingdom has dropped basically all of their pandemic responses. Now, that's a bit ticklish because some may argue that it's not just the science that has caused that. For example, in the United Kingdom, part of the reason they dropped their mandates wasn't just because they have decided, well, now we see where the science is going and we make this decision according to the science. No, it wasn't just that. It was, as I've said before, they were caught partying at the height of their lockdowns in 2020, when they had people locked down and cannot visit your good old granny and had people dying alone in hospitals. They had their very own bring your own bottle soirees in official residences, official government residences, and I believe at the present count, I think it was over 5 parties they were caught holding or hosting. So they were up against it already. It was already the conservative side over in the United Kingdom ruling, well, in government power, and the conservative side most places in the world generally leans less towards the COVID mandate business. So they were already on thin ice with their base. A lot of their base wasn't for this COVID mandate business anyway. And then when you add in the fact that now they were caught back in 2020 doing what they were doing, it already made it very difficult for them to seriously come out and proclaim any more stringent measures. Many people would have looked at them rightfully as hypocrites. And then you look over in the Czech Republic, they're dialing back. They were one of those seeming to head down a really scary line. They were going towards a line where they were actually going to do mandatory vaccines, not the need the vaccine to come into the work site kind of mandatory vaccines. No, the actual you need a vaccine, otherwise you pay a fine or go to jail kind of mandatory vaccines. But they squashed that. I'm pretty sure very gladly for most of their citizens. The reason they quashed it, because surprise, surprise, they said it was causing a rift in their society. It was fracturing their society. Wow. Who would have thought forcing people to do a medical procedure could cause fractures and fissures in society? Such a shocking development, really and truly. Once it's not Bluetooth. With any disease, we can take steps to avoid infection. I haven't been infected. Neither have I. However, it is here to stay. We can't hide at home forever. I haven't been home. I've been constantly working, figuratively speaking, right? And hi, Auntie Do, what's up? Welcome to the live. I'm glad you're here. So, as we're talking about COVID, though, and the possible horizon, we're seeing the possibility of a new surge in the Omicron cases. Here's the problem. At this very moment, the government is talking about hosting some sort of carnival. Hey, Empress Roni, welcome to the live. Yes, you're late. You may have been early for the former Nathan Springer and the former Mindful Lives, but this is a new leaf we have turned over. We are doing this timeliness in a serious manner now. Yes. The government at this present moment is fiddling with the idea of still hosting some kind of carnival and still having, and I will not answer that question, and still having some manner of festivities in some way and really dialed back. But it seems like not many people are going along with this idea. Not many people are very happy and enthused about this idea. Always a pleasure listening to you. Why, thank you, Auntie Do. Not many people are enthused about the idea of the government still hosting a scaled-back version of the carnival. Now, first among those that we would be getting into are some doctors. Some doctors are saying that this seems to be a terrible idea at this present moment. Doctors Fair 2022 carnival plans will cause spike. 2 doctors have weighed in on government's proposed controlled carnival plan and have expressed concerns about a spike in COVID-19 infections after safe zone activities. Public health specialist Dr. Manjrika Bahal yesterday told Guardian Media that the idea behind the carnival events does not align with the government's public health regulations regarding the number of people who can gather and social distance. I don't really subscribe to having these carnival events because no matter what you do, there's going to be major flouting of the public health regulations. And then too, you see the Minister of Health and the Prime Minister. Both of them have both kind of coaxed the population into believing that if you have house parties, keep it at a minimum. Try to avoid it during the Christmas time. Try to keep it under 10, and now you're going to have a carnival event, which by nature, whether indoor or outdoor, the reality is that because of our culture, we may not adhere to the regulations. Now, I can't say I disagree with the man. As I've said previously, what will happen if the government relaxes all the regulations such as safe zone and no more mask wearing? Well, I think we'd just be like Florida for the most part. Well, without the added access to further medicines. I can't say I disagree with him. I've said it before. The general culture of what the festivities of Carnival is a kind of free up yourself and do as you will. So if you're trying to host those events with a way more restrained vibe, it's either you're not going to get the kind of people who wanted those events in the first place, or the people are going to ignore you. And would you have enough security, enough overseeing to ensure that these events go according to plan and according to the stipulated guidelines and the protocols that they're supposed to hold? Good luck with that. While Bahal is against the idea of carnival during the pandemic, he agreed that if there's such activity, then outdoor events would be safer than indoor events. Now, why this is important is because the government, in their suggested, I believe, exclusively indoor events. And this has been what I've been seeing for quite some time now. Some of the decisions in this seem like they're trying to make the safe decision, but in trying to make the safe decision, they're still making the more dangerous one. It's like you're locking yourself in your home because you're afraid of the bandits in the streets. And let's say there's a 1 in 100,000 chance that someone is going to break open your door and try to harm you. But let's see, there's a 1 in 1,000 chance. It's a hypothetical situation. There's a 1 in 100,000 chance someone is going to break through your door and rob you inside of your home. But let's say you live in a country where for some reason fires happen in homes very regularly. And there's a 1 in 20,000 chance that a fire could break out in your home. And instead of you allowing easy exit from your home, you decide that what you're going to do is make your home impregnable, make it into a fortress, a jail. So you exclude the 1 in 100,000 chance of a bandit ever breaking in and robbing you, but then you increase the chance of a fire happening, and then you cannot leave the house and disaster gets worse. And many of these decisions, I find, seem to be going along a line like that. That's why when our chief epidemiologist, previously in one of the lives I read, where he said that none of the measures that are enacted to decrease the spread could possibly increase the spread. And I frowned at that because that's not a scientific statement. That doesn't line up with scientific accuracy. There are some measures you could take with the hopes of decreasing the spread, but in reality, because of mistakes made, because of various reasons, you could end up increasing the spread nonetheless. That can happen. And if that happens, then you have a chance of your very measure that you're putting in place now to try and get a hold on this. Now it makes it slip out of hand. There's that. I bet you safe zone bar staying open till 10 p.m. but beach closing 2 p.m. How? Many hows to ask there. A lot of hows to ask. I feel, this is Dr. Bahal speaking, I feel that indoor gathering might be more dangerous than the outdoor. If it is handled properly, there's less tendency for the virus to spread, he said. That's a fact. I've been saying this for quite some time now because the science has been out on this for quite some time now. The virus spreads less outdoors. I feel having Carnival this year, just like the Easter weekend last year, just like the election weekend in Tobago House of Assembly, just like the Christmas weekend, it's going to cause a surge in cases. Bahal said the healthcare system also just cannot handle a surge in cases. If we had a bigger healthcare system that could, accommodate it, then fine. If you had a bigger healthcare system that could accommodate it, then fine. You just go in there and know that some would live and some would die. But the healthcare system just cannot absorb a surge in cases, especially if they require ICU beds. And this reasoning that Dr. Bahal is speaking of there, that is the primary reason behind a lot of the measures and why some of the measures could actually make some sense in a country like ours. If we had a healthcare system where you could have there was carrying capacity enough that whoever got sick could have still gotten treated, then you could say, well, it's your responsibility. If you want to risk it and get sick, well, you do your thing. But if the case is that if too many people get sick, that it would end up incapacitating our entire healthcare system, then you would be causing unnecessary hurt on some people who may be making proper decisions, or some people who may have survived if there were better decisions made in handling an outbreak of a virus. So there is an argument for some of these measures. The question is just which measures would be effective. Endocrinologist Dr. Joel Tiloksing agreed. He too believed that the already fractured healthcare system would break under the pressure of a surge in cases. If you have the explosion of cases after Carnival, you are going to overburden your health care. You are going to overburden an already fractured healthcare sector, Tiloksing said. He said hospital beds and other dwindling resources would be tapped further. Tiloksing said even the safe zone idea with only vaccinated attendees is not as safe as people think. This is a doctor saying this. This is not me. This is not Nathan Springer saying this. This is Dr. Tiloksing. He is saying that even the safe zone idea with only vaccinated attendees is not as safe as people think. Vaccines don't necessarily prevent transmission of the virus, he said. Well, we all know this by now. The virus can spread even among the vaccinated. Tiloksing said the criteria to measure full vaccination has also changed. With the arrival of variants like Delta and Omicron that evade vaccines, fully vaccinated people can still transmit viral particles, and we have been seeing breakthrough infections with persons who have been ostensibly fully vaccinated, Tiloksing said. We have been told to reduce congregation and reduce close contact settings, and this is a disaster brewing. Vaccines are not magic bullets, and neither do they prevent transmission. And as the information seems to show, with the Omicron variant, vaccines seem to be even less effective, at least in stopping the transmission of this variant. So vaccinated people transmit the Omicron variant at a high rate. So if we have Carnival festivities indoors during this time when Omicron is on the rise, almost surely we will see some spikes linked to those activities. If we do have them, we should at least be able to understand that much. Let them keep Carnival, then they will say it's the unvax caused the spike. Oh. I agree with Dr. Tiloksing. Vaccination is just to give a layer of protection. Good. I agree with that. People should be quarantined after being in safe zones and flights, especially from the US. I think they are quarantined after flights, but you're going to quarantine people after safe zones? Sir, the country would not be able to function like that. How would people even work in a safe zone? What's going to happen to the employees in a safe zone? If you're a bartender in a safe zone, every night after you go home from work, you have to get a secluded shuttle ride home, go into your bedroom and sleep alone every night. And you're saying exactly. So that's literally your plan, to leave the entire safe. Everyone who works or goes into a safe zone, let them live in a bubble by themselves. And now the truth is, if this was like a Sims game or something like that, if this was some kind of simulated reality where we could control it and then restart and whatever happens, no one is actually affected. I think I would have actually loved to see that kind of experiment, but a safe zone is going against the logic of COVID protocols to some extent. I would have actually loved to see that experiment unfold. It would have been very interesting to see if we could have seen somehow, if somehow it was possible, to have bubbles of people in safe zones and bubbles of everyone else who doesn't go into a safe zone or doesn't work there, and see if there's increased spread in which group. That would have been a very interesting experiment. So I used to work as medical professionals, and honestly, it is really overwhelming. I've heard many medical professionals say that what is happening right now feels and seems overwhelming to them. Do like Star Trek, have a decontamination room they need to go through to go home when they come out. The name safe zone is very misleading. I understand that, and I said something like that also in the earlies. I think now there are multiple parts to this. When the government was pitching the safe zone idea, they would have wanted to pitch the idea that this zone would be safe and people going into that zone would be somehow more protected, because that's the only thing that made creating that policy make sense. And now on the business people's side, they would hold on to that for their life. You would rarely, R-A-R-E-L-Y, with the Trinidadian accent, sometimes that rarely word pronunciation is a bit difficult. But you would rarely hear any business owner come out against the safe zone policies, because the safe zone policies is all that allows some of them to remain open. So as they see it, it's either safe zone or nothing. And if they had to choose between safe zone or nothing, they're good with safe zone. Let's be real, and safe zones contributing to the rise in cases. I do not know that to be a fact. I would not doubt that some safe zones would be some hotspot in the spread, safe from infecting people who are more likely to end up in hospital or dead. All right. But it wasn't only the doctors that had a problem with it. It wasn't only the doctors. Over in Tobago, the Tobago Business Chamber, their head also said it was not a good idea. He said, don't focus on Carnival, focus on more important issues. The Tobago Business Chamber boss, let's go over to that article. Let's pull that article up. The Tobago Business Chamber boss says the country would be better served by focusing on more fundamental issues: sustainable economic recovery, strengthening the healthcare system, fixing the education system, and ensuring the nation's children can return to school safely. Now, that's why whoever rushes into position of governance, well, good luck for you, and you get probably what you deserve for rushing into some of those places blindly. Because some of those decisions, really, there isn't any right decision in it. Because the promoters and the mass men, they're out and they're up in arms. They disagree with this idea too. They're saying they don't have enough time to do this. Now, I was saying this also in the live when they announced this news, when I read that article, because it was obvious to anyone who knows anything about planning anything. The time is just too short. You do not have enough time to plan what you need to plan for what goes into Carnival. But here's the thing. Can you imagine if the government announced last year, November, that yes, we were going to host Carnival? A lot of people would have been very, very upset about that. And then they held up for it a little too late, and they announced it late, and still a lot of people are upset about that. Now, announcing it as of at all, having it at all, is getting some people upset. So there is no decision that could have been made that everyone would have agreed with. There is none. Promoters, band leaders not feeling Carnival vibe. With under 6 weeks to go until the country gets a taste of Carnival, promoters and band leaders are not feeling the vibe. Many in the entertainment and events industry yesterday said it was an insult for the government to even call the proposed events next month Carnival. Owner of Winaboy Entertainment, Avinda Rampersad, who has hosted a number of Carnival fetes, told the Express that calling a 2-week period of concerts Carnival was misleading. Rampersad said in a phone interview, Carnival is not on. And they had an exclamation point after that. That's why I made sure to read it like that. Carnival is not on. This is not Carnival. That's like taking someone to a double stand but telling them it only has cucumber. This is not bringing in any type of economic growth for anyone. Now, as far as it goes for the country, that last sentence is probably the one that many people would be most interested in, at least on a countrywide basis. This is not bringing in any type of economic growth for anyone. How are you making kings and queen costumes in such short notice? I said the same thing. The Trinidad and Tobago Promoters Association felt the same way. In a statement yesterday, it called for the reopening of the event sector. We are clear, the name Taste of Carnival, while an important intervention for the state public relations machine. Now listen to what the Promoters Association is saying in this. While an important intervention for the state public relations machine has absolutely no impact on our industry. As a nation, we have missed the opportunity to activate Carnival for 2022. The TTPA is not aligned with any agenda that only supports state-funded events at state-owned venues a few short weeks after the traditional Ash Wednesday end of Carnival date, with no sense of what happens thereafter. Anyone notice the pandemic is like a mild zombie apocalypse movie? It's damn if you do, damn if you don't. Correct. Carnival is extremely important, though new concepts have to be developed. I might be infected with the fed up variant because I have symptoms of over this and tired. My barber afraid COVID can't get a decent cut for months. And someone in the chat is asking who is paying for that, not Trinis. And that's where some of the problem is. I wonder how the entertainers eating a food with this pandemic and virtual carnival activities. They aren't eating a food. And that's what the Promoters Association is saying. They're saying that this whole Taste of Carnival business is more for the state to have a public relations something. The state knew that they wanted to sprinkle out a little public relations goodies to make people feel a little better over the season, so they threw out that whole Taste of Carnival idea. That's what the Trinidad and Tobago Promoters Association is accusing them of. They're saying this is just public relations. It's not going to have a positive effect on their industry. They're saying that when you're hosting state-funded, he said it there, listed it out, it's going to be state-funded events at state-owned venues. And here's where he said, the TTPA is a private sector body using personal funds to generate employment and do business. We do not receive any state funding whatsoever. We do not have the luxury of taxpayer funds to prop us up. We have to be profitable to survive. Now, how many people in the live would remember from 2 lives or 3 lives ago when we spoke? Honestly, I can't remember which live that would have been. When we spoke about TSTT and the problems TSTT is now facing, because TSTT is a state enterprise. They are run by the state, by the government. And when it comes to competing on the open market, because they always have that boost of government money backing them, competition isn't that much of a strong point for them. And this is the same case here. If you're having events that would be state funded in state-owned auditoriums and venues, then these events very likely would be unprofitable. These events would just basically be state theater that they put on for public relations. And in that case, they would be putting on events at a cost to the taxpayers. And then these events very likely are going to be very highfalutin and may have, who knows who it would have. And what you're going to have is the state paying for their public relations that doesn't benefit the industry, doesn't benefit private producers in that industry, barely benefits many of the employees who usually get work during the season in that industry. They're just doing it for the public relations points. There's no economic bonus from that. And that's the reality. If it's state funded and in a state owned venue, that's the reality. And that's why you're going to see very likely no private person or very few private people get in on this, because it is not profitable. And here's the thing, even if it's not profitable for a private person, it's still not profitable for the state. And if it's not profitable for the state, it's going to cost us money. So in the middle of a pandemic, we are going to pay more money out to host a slew of semi-carnival concerts just for the state, according to what the Promoters Association calls it, to have that little bit of public relations boost. If foreigners come to jump and wine, they have to do like a priest vet and abstain from the... What a waste of time. Better we try for next year. Many of them are seeing that also. Band leaders upset. Let me look for one specific band leader in this. Band leader for Ronnie and Caro Mass band, Ronnie McIntosh, said in an interview, first to begin, I have no idea what they mean by carnival is on. The mass business is not a today for tomorrow thing. It consists of a lot of planning, so there's nothing we could do at this point in time. Many people are saying that the time business, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't fit. In our minds, there's no carnival. Carnival means 4 o'clock, etc., etc., etc. Would you call it a carnival concert then? No. I'm beginning to wonder if it's a vaccination strategy. And I wouldn't doubt seeing a lot of the government's general angle that they go at. Maybe some of this would in fact really be a vaccination strategy. But here's the thing. A year into all of this, do you think someone who has yet remained unvaccinated, you threatened their job, they already can't enter bars, they already can't go to cinemas, they already can't go to many other places that are safe zones, you already did that. Do you think an event held in Napa or Sapa or the Queen's Hall, sitting 6 feet apart, listening to soca tunes, I guess, is really going to tempt many people to go get vaccinated? How many people are going to be tempted by that? Honestly, how many you think are going to see this event and say, good night, Christ Child, over on YouTube? I don't even know when you said that, good night, but good night to you too. If you're over there, make sure to hit that like button as per usual. Hit that like button wherever you are and share the live if you feel so inclined. But yes, they're saying there isn't enough time. And I think even if this is some kind of vaccination strategy, who is going to go with this? Who is going to get vaccinated to go to events like this? It's just not the general carnival goers culture. The thing is, many of these events seem to be appealing to people who don't usually participate in carnival. People who want that calmer, more relaxed tone. People who were already complaining about that all that whole noise in this modern carnival. I can't take that. Well, this is their ideal event, possibly. And great for them. Possibly better for the country in some ways. But not good for the private entrepreneurs who were looking forward to making money during this season. Hard luck to them. This carnival madness might cause issues like the floating restaurant. Loopholes all around. I think very likely that, but I think that is actually already happening. I think it's already happening to some extent. Some people are already hosting their FET adjacent events. They're already hosting their FET adjacent events. Their backyard FETs, their FETs in a safe zone. There's already some of that going on. And here's the thing. I said this in a previous live also. It seems, looking back at the cultural history of Carnival, how Carnival progressed and evolved over time. Carnival started as a very bougie event for the French aristocracy in Trinidad and Tobago. It was a French festival. And then these freed slaves come and take the thing and bastardize it and watered it down into this that it is now. So it could nearly seem like it's reverting a bit. But here's the thing also. Carnival from the origin was a rebellious thing by nature. So if you're telling people to stick with the culture, well, the culture of Carnival is that rebellious revelry. And if you're saying that's part of Trinidad's culture, well, rebellious revelry might just be what you're going to continue to get. if they had normal carnival for vax people, then they would actually create an incentive. Nobody willing to vax for a virtual distance line. I agree with that. I don't think that's very encouraging to many people. Whoa, I'm not reading that one on us. All right. But with the carnival season not in line, there seems to be another group of people with intentions of making their presence known around the savannah. Maybe the revelers wouldn't be able to march around the savannah or march through Port of Spain, but there's another group that seems intent on holding the streets down. The first wave movement, they announced they were going to hold several other protests and they sent it into the police commissioner. At first, the police commissioner seemed a bit apprehensive and he was talking about the whole public health ordinances and the case and the pandemic that we're in now, and he's not sure how it's going to go. But it turns out he allowed them to have it. TTPS grants permission for the worldwide rally to freedom. Acting Commissioner of Police McDonald Jacob has granted permission for Mr. Umar Abdullah to host and observe the worldwide rally to freedom carded for Saturday 22nd January 2022 at the Queen's Park Savannah, Port of Spain. So they got their permission and they're going to hold their new march. It would be interesting to see how this one goes. So the same protocol for bars, etc. will apply. How to get a beard like mine? I suppose grow it. Yes, they are getting through with their protests. But here's the interesting thing. I've seen many people speak about, especially with the tear gassing incident from the last one, and many people are saying the line illegal is illegal, etc., etc. But if there's inconsistency how illegality is dealt with, then to say illegal is illegal becomes unfair. Illegal is illegal cannot work if there's inconsistency in how something is done. Can you imagine if we had the case where it was illegal in Trinidad and Tobago to drive cars? In Trinidad, it was against the law to drive cars on the nation's road. And then you notice that all the people from the east side, anyone east of Tacarigua going up in the east there, when they're stopped on the highway, they're allowed to drive past. But if you're anywhere else in Trinidad, you're stopped and you're charged for being on the road. Now, the law is illegal is illegal. You're not supposed to be on the road. But if you only stop people from one area or you're only allowing people from another area to get through, then that isn't really the law. We're not talking about illegality here. We're talking about basically anarcho-tyranny. You're having anarchism and you're trying to use your tyranny to rule over us in that way. And I don't like that. And I really despise hearing many people say things like the law is the law, illegal is illegal. And then you bring up, well, why didn't you say that in this case? Why didn't you push for that in this case? And they're like, well, that's another case. What are you saying? Someone in the comments in the contemplation today. Someone in the comments in the contemplation today. They said illegal is illegal. So I said, well, they were speaking about the lawsuit that the parents issued. Well, if illegal is illegal, don't you think, well, in that case, as a citizen of this country, can I have an autograph, please? There's actually an autograph on my jersey, you know. The jersey comes with an autograph on the corner here. I don't know how many of you can make that out. So, yeah, you can have an autograph, actually. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, illegal is illegal. But don't you think then in that case it would be justified for the police to at least tell us how was it illegal? What exactly did the parents of those children do that was illegal? Explain to us exactly. What exactly did they do? And then show us your use of force policy. He said, the person in the comment said the Prime Minister spoke about the use of force policy and the Commissioner spoke about okay, grand, they spoke about it. That's not what people want. Not speech. Give us it in writing. so we can look and compare. Let's have the use of force in writing. Let's see the reason they did what they did and the laws that were broken, and let's compare it. If illegal is illegal, then that should not be a problem. Then that should not be a problem. Illegal is illegal. Show us how it was. But then all of a sudden, this same person who was in the comments saying illegal is illegal, so don't pick up for the parents here. They're going to sure lose that case. They're out there already. They broke the law. Okay, all of a sudden now you're no longer interested. You're like, well, I'm neither here nor there in finding out whether what the police did was correct. So how could you just assume that what the police did was right? But then when asked if we want to really find out and make sure that what they're doing is right and make sure we have it in writing, all of a sudden, well, I'm not interested in that. Well, then you were never interested in justice. You were never interested in the right thing being done. You had your point or your side, very likely an officer or a service person themselves, and that's a real problem I have with some of these service people. They feel it's automatically their duty to stand up with every officer that has been accused of something. No, it isn't. If you are a law enforcement officer, your duty is to the law, not to your fellow officer. And if your fellow officer breaks the law, your duty to the law is above your duty to that officer. It's really sickening. Bro, what are you talking about? I always have no idea when I come across your live. You'd have to kind of be in the live for a while to know exactly which story we're on. We're talking about stories of the day, news in Trinidad and Tobago, current events, things going on around us. That's what we're talking about. And right now we're on the protests that happened recently and the fallout from it. But how come did acting Jacob all of a sudden grant the protesters permission? I think is not to make the self-image look bad. I agree. I think the commissioner right now granted the permission so quickly because he doesn't want the friction that is going to come out of this. He's trying to stay out of that friction. As I heard the JTAM leader, the union leader, warn him to not allow yourself to become a political pawn. Now, the difficult position that puts the commissioner in is maybe it had nothing to do with politics. He was just following the policy as he saw it, and that's what made him make that decision. Even if the decision was wrong, it still didn't have to be political. But now that the union leader already told you, don't make yourself be a political pawn, nearly every single decision you make from henceforth will be scrutinized with that political angle, and people may be reading into it to see if there's politics in it. Over on YouTube, someone says police gave them a chance and they continued, face the consequences. Okay, if that is the case, give us it in writing. In writing, put down that Officer XYZ told them on so many occasions XYZ, and after having told them 4 times to XYZ, with our use of force policy that shows in section XYZ, that's where we did XYZ. And here's why that is important, Christopher Williams over on YouTube. If you have that down in writing now, we as the public can look at it and judge for ourselves. If you just have it in spoken word, the police commissioner and the prime minister says, well, they broke the law, they were given warnings, and according to the use of force policy, the police did the right thing. None of us knows if that's true. You just know that's what you heard from a leader standing from a podium. We don't know that. Let's have it in writing. And if we have it in writing, signed by an official, if they lie, there is judicial consequences for it. You can get some reprieve from it. I don't understand why so many people in this country seem so uninterested in having people be accountable. Don't you want people that spend your money, people that have the power to gas you? Don't you want them to be accountable? That's insane to me. That's insane that you're just fine with zero accountability over police officers shooting gas out. You don't even have interest in the accountability. And I suspect, I don't know, I suspect that many people who have no interest in the accountability in this case is because of a tribal thing. They're either in the police service, they're either really loyal to the government side, and they see it as their side and their side is right. So, good night, boss, it's insane to me too. Yes, they see it as their side is right, so they're acting accordingly. I do not understand that. Even if the police were in the right, I will not. I have what I think should have happened, what I think they did right or they did wrong. I do not know. But wouldn't it be great for us to have the police come out and say exactly why they did what they did, show us the accountability steps in it, and then we could literally have a court go over this to see if it lines up with the law. It's beyond me why anyone could possibly disagree with this. What is there to even disagree with in this? I don't understand. Good evening, happy Friday. Good evening and happy Friday to you, to South Trini 26 in Mass. Know your rights in regards to the policing. I'm honestly afraid of these police officers. They have the power to change your life. So scary. That is very true. And some people don't understand that until they run into some police officers. And one running with a police officer could change your life permanently. They have a lot of power. And with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. And if they will not voluntarily take the responsibility on themselves, then from the population, we have to put the responsibility on them through accountability. Trinidad is a beautiful place. What direction you think our country is heading in the future? I am not sure. Send some likes about the mustache. There's the other side where they want to blame the police and dismiss it as wrong. J. Chris was here in the early, you know. J. Chris signs in early, and then he dives out to go finish work. I assume we are just playing in the background as he is doing whatever work he is doing. Aha, you said accountability. Yes, it's a funny word over here in Trinidad. South Trini 26 in Mass. I am laughing at your name because I don't even fully understand what is going on with that name. Demand accountability. Yes, we should be demanding accountability. We shouldn't be taking sides. You shouldn't let anyone rile you up to believe that they're on your side. And because they're on your side, then we don't need to be accountable for this. Shh. Let's keep this quiet. We are all on the same side. And obviously, if I am on your side, everything I do is right. And everything the other side does is wrong. Of course, we know this. We don't need to have any kind of further accountability on these issues. We are on the same side. No. Throw that away. Throw that away. Tell them the side we are on is accountability. If you have power, if you have the public purse, if you have the ability to do violence against people, can you think about that for a minute? We have given these people the legal authority to go out and gas children. They have the legal authority to shoot off gas and gas children. And you think there shouldn't be any further accountability for someone with the legal authority to gas children? Are you insane? Have you not read any history ever? Beyond me. Really, it is. But speaking of protests and making sure that you have your pass to protest, and my extension, the others in higher seats to create laws, I agree. They should be accountable even more than the police. It's just I'm on the police right now. I'm always on the politicians. They should be just, not even just as accountable, way more accountable. Speaking of protests though, as someone pointed out, I can't even remember which article I read that in or where I heard that, they were pointing out that the vast majority of protests, hey, good night, interesting, always interesting to have you in the chat. Someone was pointing out that the vast majority of protests in Trinidad are illegal. So just using the fact that the protest was illegal really isn't a viable excuse to say that is the reason it was treated in that way. Being a police officer is a thankless job. When things go bad, we get blamed. When things are beyond our control, we get blamed. We have to be mommy and daddy for John Public, a police friend told me. I agree. I agree with that sentiment. Being a police isn't necessarily an easy thing. Again, my statement to that is similar like my statement to the politicians. It's a job that you chose to go do. Do the job with professionalism, or don't do the job at all. You have a mandate, you are hired to do a job, do just that job. I understand the difficulty of policing, and it's because you're in a position of authority. And the unfortunate thing is the vast majority of instances when a police comes into interaction with a person, it's a difficult point in their life. And that's why I think particularly people like doctors, nurses, police should be really, really, really well trained in interpersonal skills. And it seems like it's the opposite case when it comes to police. Police have very little interpersonal skills. So, for example, in that same match, whenever that Sunday was, I watched a video when they arrested the social activist, what's his name, Mr. Welch. And they threw... The whole arrest seemed a little weird in the first place. They threw him in the van and they threw his camera in the van, and it seemed like they didn't understand it was still recording. When he sat in the van, they cussed him up and down. Someone of the officers was well cussing him. By the way, do you know obscene language is a crime in Trinidad and Tobago? But how many of us know that our police regularly cuss people? Bad apple make the whole force look bad. Some did not choose. Some was placed in the job by uncle, auntie, godmother, because it have real had police. Respect to those officers, but the some are nice, but some are so aggressive and very intimidating. I remember sometime, that was when, 2020, I think, I was going down Grandy, and I ended up in a roadblock, and two of the nicest officers stopped me. They were two ladies, and they stopped me, asked me questions, etc. And I left that interaction feeling like, oh, I actually didn't mind that. I could meet more police like that on a regular. Versus some police, when you meet them, the first words out their mouth is a cuss. Listen, as I was saying about doctors, nurses, and police, you have to understand when you're in those positions, almost all the time you meet someone, you meet them and that's your regular job. This is what you do day in, day out. It's whatever to you. It's the same thing. But to the person you meet, this is very likely one of the worst days in their life. If you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, you may be dealing with someone who is dying or someone whose relative is dying. Yeah, you see that every day. They don't. If you're a police and you pull someone over, even if they have a ticketable offense coming up, very likely they may not have been expecting this. You're going to tell them some horrible news here. Okay, well, you were saving to buy and upgrade your vehicle, or you were saving to get that credit union loan to do that little extension and get the baby room done, but unfortunately you are going to have to pay $1,500 to a corrupt government because we found that some one of the knickknacks on your car doesn't work too well. Listen, if you're going to tell someone that, it's not going to be a good day for them. And if you're going to create a bad day in someone's life and you introduce yourself as an antagonist in that situation, how do you expect people to have a relationship with you after that? No one is going to trust you. No one is going to like you. And it's going to be your fault. You are unlikable, and that's why people don't like you. I'm not saying this for all police. Of course, I already said I met good police before. I have met some good police. I'm sure there are many. But the thing is, as I was speaking about with accountability, when you have someone with that great amount of power, you can't really allow those mistakes and bad apples to still exist. They just have too much power. It's like having a human, and it's like we're hiring a human as ants. Let's say all of us are ants and we hire a human to keep guard for us. This human is going to keep guard for us. But if we're ants, we have to be really careful about how this human moves. If they get too excited and run, they may commit genocide on a whole colony of ants. all brothers and sisters in that colony over there was killed because one footstep was made by this human. So if an ant colony hires a human to be their guardian or protector or something, they would have to have a lot of oversight over that human, because all the movements they make would be so powerful. It's the same thing with the police. It's the same thing with the government. When you have people with that much power, any decision, listen, every decision the government makes would have a positive effect on some, but very likely a negative effect on others. And in some cases, so negative, it may kill some people. Some of the decisions governments make cause people to die. That's as serious as it gets. Similarly with police. So when you're doing things with that much power, we need the accountability, and we need you to have the temperament, the proper attitude in dealing with these things. That's why I don't really like Dr. Rowley's response many of the times. You're dealing with people's lives. You can't come off high-handed and heavy-handed and aloof and above everyone else. You're dealing with someone's life. You asked, you begged them to choose you to help them out and help them in managing their life as a public figure. And then you're going to take that trust and abuse it like that? Nah, that does not work. It just doesn't make sense. But speaking of the protests, there have been some ongoing protests. And as some have said, it seems like in Trinidad, nearly none of the protests are legal anyway. Fiery road protest in Claxton Bay. I wonder if these protesters got a license to do this protest. They were breaking the law. If you block a roadway, you are breaking the law. I wonder if the police ran up inside of Claxton Bay, lopping tear gas into those crowds. Somehow I suspect not. Commuters sought alternative routes this morning as the southern main road at Claxton Bay was blocked with burning debris during a protest by residents and maxi taxi drivers over its deplorable conditions. Guardian Media understands the protest started as early as 4 a.m. I think the Beetham residents taught something to these other protesters. I know of an incident where an officer stopped a woman ticketing the lady and asked for her number. I know of multiple incidences of such. There was an incident a couple years ago. I can't remember exactly how many years ago. The police caught a young couple engaging in personal activities over the Caroni, close to the Caroni swamp. They stopped and they assaulted the woman. That got dark real fast, didn't it? Yes. They stopped and they thought that they had the young couple in a vulnerable position because you could be charged for this? We could embarrass you now. We could charge you and put your name all over the media. So we're going to take advantage of this situation. And when that happens once, it makes you wonder if there are multiple times situations like this could have happened. And possibly, if they found someone in a vulnerable enough position, that person would not have made the report. And if they never made the report, we would have never known. So this is some actions that we know police officers do. So we have to have that accountability from them. As NWE said, love the police. I like that remix. Love the police. So what will happen if a politician cuss? They are just human. Here's the thing, author Malcolm. If you want to cuss and you find that should be okay, then don't enforce that law on other people. And then petition the government to get rid of the law. If you as a police see that you should be able to cuss people, then Go tell your higher ups, go make it known that you find the cussing laws in Trinidad don't make any sense. Personally, I think we should have more freedom of speech laws. When people talk about freedom of speech in Trinidad, they don't know what they're talking about. We don't have that freedom of speech. You're talking about the American Constitution. We come from the British Constitution. We ain't got that over here. You play you cussing an officer, you're going to be arrested. But I believe personally, we should have that freedom of speech. I don't think a police officer should be able to arrest someone for insulting them. That would help take down some of those officers a peg or two. If, if in Trinidad you allow people to say what they want to an officer, some of those officers are going to get it. Because there are already laws on the books that tells you can't tell them what you want to, but people still risk it and tell them all kind of things. So if those laws move, and I think it should be so, here's where I would balance it. I understand the reason for obscenity laws in a society. You would not want your society to be going down an obscene route. But however, I don't think that it is justified. We give the power to choose who goes to jail for obscenity to people like police who cuss. And that was the example I was drawing when I drew the example of we ban everyone from driving on the road. We ban everyone from driving on the road, but we only allow people from Arima to do it. If we create a law that we unjustly enforce, then to me, it might be better we didn't have the law. Because what you're creating is that possibility, you're creating and manufacturing a situation for tyranny and advantage. That's why I always hated our relative tint laws, and I was grateful when they changed it to an actual limit that could be tested. So you can't just be, it's up to the officer, it's their opinion. I hate laws like that, where you're just leaving everything up to the willingness of an officer to enforce. And then you're just giving tyranny in the hands of officers. So those commuters protested for better roads over in Claxton Bay. The roads have, if you ever drove through Claxton Bay recently and you saw the state of the roads, you might understand this. The Minister of Works issued a threat to residents who were burning debris in the road. I believe it was in Dewey, somewhere in South. He issued a threat. If you burn the road, you would damage the road, and then you would be charged to fix it. I don't understand that threat. Because if my road already damaged, you're telling me what, I'm going to damage it twice? Listen, I want you to come and fix the road. I don't care. I don't mind damaging it if it causes you to come faster to fix the road. Then to tell me I'm going to pay to fix it. Listen, sir, I already pay to fix my roads. You do not pay to fix my roads. All of us pay to fix our roads. So that isn't a threat that carries a lot of water. If my roads are bad, I will burn it to fix it. That kind of makes sense. And it seems like some of the Beetham residents have given the advice to some of those other residents. Hey, the secret is to start real early. Because these people jump out 4 a.m. 4 a.m. they jumped out. Now, I also found it very interesting. That not very long after, the Ministry of Works and Transport admits delay in Claxton Bay Road works following protests. And then they listed out when it's going to be repaired, how it's going to be done, the steps they made, where they made mistakes. So what you're saying, Ministry of Works, is I have to get on like a clown. I have to go and collect tires and burn them in my streets and block off the highway and the bus route, and then you're going to come and tell me how my repairs are going to go on. That's what you're telling me. That's what you're suggesting. And the annoying part in it is it seems like Trinidad functions that way in many other areas. I spoke about this in a previous live where it seems like if we track back through the pandemic, the outdoor pyres. People were petitioning for this so long. They were begging the government, please, can we do this? Can you tell us why you are forbidding people from doing this? Please, please, please tell us. They weren't telling them until we reached to the courts, and it seems like this is going to create a stink in the courts. Then all of a sudden the lawyers decide, we have new science, let's change it. Why must it reach that far? Same thing with the rivers. Same thing with some of the reopenings of some of the economy. And now same thing it seems with the road repairs. Same thing in Beetham with their sewer system. Must people always get on like a something in order to get service? That's the attitude that Trinidad inculcates. And if you inculcate that in Trinidad, then you are going to cause that to happen. You are creating that culture in our country. I'd close with this example for the YouTube and Instagram live. I saw someone speak about airports in different parts in the world. And they were speaking about how oftentimes in the United States, they speak and they tell which section is ready to board, and everyone looks at their boarding pass and orderly lines up. When their group is called, then they go forward and everything is in order. And then the person was speaking about, they went over to a former Soviet republic. And they were noting, they heard over the system that they called for one group to board. And they just saw everyone got up and ran, dashed to the exit to try and board the plane at the same time. And he was like, what's going on? He's asking his friend who is from the area what is going on. And his friend was letting him know that what happened was during the communist era, people recognized that lining up in an order didn't work. The person at the back of the line ended up not getting the food. In order to get rations, you had to rush to the front. And when you rush to the front, that's how you succeeded. So they created that culture that still exists. It's creating cultures. It's creating cultures. And that's what we're doing in Trinidad. We're creating the culture where you have to get on like an idiot to get something done. Thoughts on circumcision? Wow. What a random question. Action if you protest, yes, fire is the answer. That is the only way things get done in Trinidad. Forget humanity, return to monkey. These roadblocks happen when the people are not pleased with people who are running things in this country. It's the people who we put in the seats who are responsible, therefore we are responsible. I agree. Do you think this country would be better off if the Queen of England ran it? Good night, teacher. Good night, Lincoln Foxtrot. No, I don't think we would have been better if the Queen of England ran our country because, one, the Queen of England doesn't run any country. The English Parliament runs England. The Queen is a little more than figurative head of state. She doesn't have a lot of political power, at least none that is used. And I prefer all leadership. My preference in leadership is as close to who is being led as possible. If you're leading San Fernando, you should have someone from San Fernando leading San Fernando. If you're leading Trinidad, you should have someone from Trinidad leading Trinidad. And the further away a leader is, the more disconnected they get from their population. So if you had people over in England ruling Trinidad, the decisions they made very likely would not have been as suited for our population. Not saying that who we have as leaders work so beautifully, but I don't think necessarily that England would have been better just because of the distance and very likely the elitism that would have precipitated from that kind of arrangement. All right. We've been going well for over an hour on YouTube. So I will now bid you adieu. It was nice. And I'll see you again Monday in the next Mindful Live. So goodbye to YouTube. Goodbye to Instagram. Glad you all tuned in. I'll be over on the TikTok Live for a little while longer. And I'll see you all on Monday, if not over there.